Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, will there be a voter backlash to the increases in real property taxes? New Maryland laws taking effect, including additional gas taxes, and two new entrants in the race for the U.S. Senate, David Trone and Angela Alsobrooks. And finally, Montgomery County considers banning swimming pool sharings. Oh my gosh, it's already summer! Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by Secretary of the Maryland Republican Central Committee, Mark Uncapher, and civic activist, Cary Lamari. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. While not approving County Executive Mark Elrich's 10% increase on real property taxes, the County Council did approve 98% of the County Executive's spending requests and will find a way to use reserves to close the funding gap. According to the Greater Area Association of Realtors, no fan of the tax increases on its industry, but as a result of its efforts, it claims it sent 43,000 emails from Montgomery County residents to the County Council in opposition of the tax hikes. So, Cary, the County Council expressed great reluctance to pass the tax increase, but the majority did so anyway. Will there be a political price to pay for not only increasing real property taxes, but also nearly doubling the county recordation taxes and increasing impact development fees?
I think we're creating a bigger divide, in our county with respect to public support. I think there's going to be some backlash. I don't know exactly what it is, but the reality is every other jurisdiction around us, including Prince George's County, is not raising their taxes. And the fact of the matter is, Montgomery County business owners' income has gone down in the last decade, even while the rest of the nation, it's gone up 3%. It's not the right environment to increase taxes. What we need to do is what we've said in previous shows. You've got to bolster or build an economic, development policy, and we're not doing that. All we have is a bunch of whiners and complainers on the council saying, "Oh, we need money for the school board." Well, that's another thing. What about the mediocrity, the lack of educational advancement? If the divide is getting bigger, do you want to continue to reward them? I don't know.
Well, it's a great to ponder the question, because usually when there have been big tax increases, there's a voter backlash in the next election. And Mark, are voters in Montgomery County indifferent to the increases? Are they so embedded in the system that they dare not vote against their own self-interest?
Well, I think actually, you closing attorneys probably bear a little of the responsibility of that, you directly, but those tax increases, to the extent they come out of mortgage escrow accounts, they just are very small. It really, as a taxpayer, feels a lot different when each October and each December, or September, I should say, in each December, you write out that check for the real estate taxes and realize just how big it is. And I think too many homeowners are kind of somehow buffered in that.
Well, it'll be interesting, because when those tax rates go into effect, and when you have your new assessments come every third year, you'll see, you're right. There is some buffering, because much of the real property taxes are escrowed into your mortgage payments. But when the mortgage company starts asking, well, your monthly payment is going to go up another $300 a month in order to pay for your property taxes, then there'll be a recognition that there's something afoot there and needs to be changed. But Cary, I find it fascinating, that we have this, constant, cry from the county executive, the county council. They all pay lip service for the need for affordable housing, But of course, their actions suggest they don't want the private sector to provide affordable housing. They seem to only want government to be able to provide affordable housing. Don't we need a healthy private sector?
Absolutely. I've actually supported community land trusts in Montgomery County, God, going back to 2006. If we gave, nonprofits the ability to create affordable housing and we utilized our, housing initiative fund, we would be much further along than we are today. But as you stated, all we're doing is promoting higher cost housing. And of course, the county has to subsidize whatever low, affordable housing we get. And the reality is we're digging a hole deeper and deeper and deeper. We're creating fewer and fewer affordable housing. Yet that's the population that's coming to Montgomery County. 75% of them in the future will be in need of affordable housing.
Well, I think as we've seen in the past, Mark, and I'll let you have the last word on this, the affordable housing will continue to be in Frederick County, Howard County, and elsewhere. And we continue to have workers commuting to Montgomery County. Mark, I'll let you have the last word.
Well, and that's exactly right. We've made Montgomery County less affordable, and in the subsidy arrangement, as Cary described, of basically government dependent housing, doesn't go far enough to deal the needs that people have out there. It drives up the cost of market-based housing because those subsidies end up frequently getting built into the equation. And in the end, Montgomery County is less affordable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we all can bemoan the loss of affordable housing and come up with better ideas to figure it out. Now I want to turn to one of the great economic stories that came out of COVID. And as I drive around Montgomery County, I note every time I pass someone who's wearing a face mask, covering their face in a car. And I realize that for many, COVID still lives on. But one of the many things that developed during the COVID lockdown were some really innovative and creative ways of serving their customers. Restaurants, learned to be flexible and provide additional carry-out and delivery services and places sit-down dining. Parents created learning pods so their children could have face-to-face contact instead of learning just online. And some entrepreneurs created a way to have fun and exercise through pool sharing. Mark, the novel idea of having homeowners renting out their private swimming pools, I think was rather ingenious. Now Montgomery County, like the Grinch who stole Christmas, wants to regulate it out of existence. What do you think?
Well, this, I think, is the problem with having a full-time county council. They go an entire month and nobody has picked up their press release. And then they turn to their staff and they say, you got to come up with a bill that's going to get attention. And this is this month's bill. And it's got, it gets a little bit of attention. It's just ridiculous. It's really a stupid idea. And it really reflects the fundamental hostility that the council seems to have to sort of business or economic arrangements that somehow they're not in control of or shaping.
They want to license it, Mark. They want the licensing fees. Cary, isn't this just like Airbnb or VBRO or something for the wet set? I mean, come on, let kids
actually have fun. It is. And in fact, if you want to make a special, I think it's ridiculous. I mean, the reality is let people enjoy their pools. I think maybe some regulation as far as safety is concerned might be appropriate. I'll tell you what, it's worth a discussion, a conversation, but the hype about it, come on,
come on. It's summertime. They got to talk about something besides tax. This show needs to talk about something besides taxes.
That's right.
That's why it's a topic today.
We should be doing this show from poolside as we speak.
Good idea.
Great idea. All right. So in 2 weeks, we'll do it poolside at my house. It'll be fun. I won't promise you sandwiches though. All right. Thank you,
Well,
Governor.
because then you would need a license, because it's one thing to be a pool, it's
Okay.
another thing to be a commercial eating establishment. And I don't know, Casey, I like you a lot, but I don't know if your food is going to be safe enough for me to eat.
I don't blame you.
Or the bathroom facilities. Got to make sure you got that.
Well, yeah, the whole schlemiel, right?
So, but let's go down with this pool thing, because we really need to also ask, what are the bathroom arrangements going to be?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, well,
I mean, are we going to have common? There's a lot of things to work out that the council's got to deal with, right?
and ADA.
Make sure you have a
there's
cabana
a lot-
boy in there.
lot
You know,
to-
you got to have that.
A lot to consider. We got to wrap. We'll go on to take a break here, but I want to thank Governor Moore. Governor Moore, thank you so much for allowing the Maryland state gas tax to increase to 47 cents per gallon. Stay tuned. We'll talk about that and more when we come back. Now, as important as the 90-day session of the General Assembly is each year, most Marylanders pay very little attention to the bills being passed until June, when many of those laws begin to take effect. Mark, over the past 2 years, according to Maryland Matters, the rate of the gas tax increased by more than 30% due to inflation and surging fuel prices. And now, thanks to the General Assembly, it's going to go up an additional 10%. Why would the governor and the legislature, allow such a regressive tax increase go into effect during such a high inflationary period?
Well, of course, this tax has been on autopilot for a number of years. It was set a number of years ago, and while effort, and it was bipartisan, Peter Franchot supported the effort to stop this automatic reset that took place. It is also somewhat reflective of the fact that the transportation finances, both for Maryland but other states, are really in jeopardy because they're dependent on the gas tax. Frequently, electric and vehicles are essentially exempt from having to pay for transportation. A. B. Much of the funding goes to mass public transportation, and Fairfax revenues have not recovered since COVID, and so there's a yawning gap that public transportation is facing. That basically the budget makers look to the gas tax to continue to fund. So as we pay for higher gas, more for gas, what we're effectively paying for is the fact that folks are not returning to public transportation.
Well, I mean, the problem is, more than that. I mean, people are not driving as much, at least.
Well, yeah, there's that and more fuel efficient cars. I mean, there's a lot of challenges that transportation fund is not is challenged.
Well, I can appreciate. I switched from a gas guzzler to a hybrid years ago, just because I wanted to double my mileage. I know that's very very important personal information that the audience wants to know. Cary, the General Assembly, switching gears for a second, passed a lot of green energy laws this past year. One that I found, was kind of anti-consumer and really anti-small business was a requirement for all medium and heavy-duty vehicles, in other words, pickup trucks, be required to be zero emission free beginning in 2027. I drive around a lot in Montgomery County, and I see lots of contractors with their pickup trucks and so on. These vehicles aren't cheap. I mean, really, by 2027, everybody's going to have to start buying electric pickup trucks.
I'm a contractor, electrical contractor. I wire electric vehicle charging stations. I'm all for electric vehicles, but we're not there yet. I mean, the entire workforce for our county drive vans, they drive pickup trucks, and it affects the cost of everything that you do to your home. The reality is there still needs to be advancements in batteries and in automobile circuitry. To suggest that we're going to be ready by 2027, I don't see that. I just don't see it. Not to mention, we don't have enough electric vehicle charging stations. I mean, What are we going to do?
My son is operations manager for a liquor wholesaler near Baltimore, and they're already beginning to price out, how many charging stations they will need if and when they have to go to, electric vehicles. And, they don't have a huge fleet of, it's a smaller wholesaler, but they do have, 10 vehicles that that they have to maintain. So
We're close, but we're not there yet. And I don't see us being there by 2027. I think there needs to be more work.
Well, the other thing that we need to also reflect on is the cost of electricity is going up. And part of the reason for that is as we try and transition to more intermittent renewable, we also need the backup in order to have the reliability of the basically natural gas fired plants to come online when the wind and the sun isn't there. There's huge challenges to have enough electricity at an affordable price. There's this, and we've already talked about the overall the infrastructure for charging. We're a long ways off, but these rules have been kind of put in as a kind of command and control that if the legislature, if policymakers will it, it'll all be there. And that's just not a realistic proposition.
Well, what makes this worse is that Maryland is adopting the California rule. This was not a rule that they initiated themselves. They're adopting the California rule. Before we leave our focus on the legislature, Mark, I wanted to ask you about the horse racing industry, because once again, they've extended the Maryland Horse Act to support the horse racing industry. Just at the same time, we're learning that Laurel Racetrack and Pimlico are doing away with off-track betting. Isn't this just a dying industry that we should just let die along with buggy whips?
Well, it isn't just that it's a dying industry. It's an industry that has continued to rely on, I guess the number is around $50 million a year in subsidies. And with, as you described, declining participation, declining attendance, declining handles, and everything else. But inevitably, the response in Maryland is, what about the Preakness, which is this one-day event that was once iconic to the state, but I'm not sure that the continued expenditure to maintain the industry is justified with that.
Well. And so the last topic we want to touch on Cary is, the legislature has approved the recreational use of marijuana effective July 1st. At the same time, they have also restricted law enforcement from stopping a vehicle if the only reason is to suspect that marijuana is being used in the vehicle. They may smell the odor, they may see smoke, but they're not allowed to stop a vehicle under those conditions. Now, there may be other reasons they can make a traffic stop, but for the purpose of just marijuana, they're not permitted to. Where was Mothers Against Drunk Driving when this bill passed? I mean, driving while impaired with alcohol and driving while impaired with from substance abuse and marijuana is an issue, and people are going to be harmed by this. What do you think?
I think it's against the law. I think that it can harm people. I'm sorry. If you want to decriminalize marijuana, I'm okay with that. Okay, but if you're talking about potentially life-threatening situations, I don't want to see the police hampered. Do your job. If there's a child out there walking the street and you've got some guy that's high on marijuana driving a car, well, guess what? One of the others got to go. Either the child's got to stop walking across the street, or the marijuana driver's just got to stop smoking marijuana. Nobody should be impaired when they drive. I'm sorry. It just shouldn't happen.
It's interesting. There are already public safety ads that are being circulated and watched about marijuana impaired driving, where 4 people are in a vehicle and they all said, well, I can't drive. I can't drive. And they end up having a little picnic on the side, in their front lawn. So it's a recognizable problem, and one hopefully that people won't be harmed by. Let's switch gears and look at our last topic today, which is the U.S. Senate race. This week, millionaire Congressman David Trone and Prince George's County Executive Angela Olsobrooks announced that they are running for the U.S. Senate seat being vacated by retiring Senator Cardin. The producer's telling me we don't have a lot of time. We talk too much. Maybe she's just telling me that I talk too much. Cary, what do you think of the latest entrance into this race?
Angela Alsobrooks, I mean, she's relying on the woman's vote. She's the county executive for Prince George's County. One good thing is she's not going to raise taxes, property taxes in Prince George's County. All right, Mark, I hope you heard that. But the reality is, she's not. I'm sorry, when you've got players like Jamie Raskins, Mr. Trone, and even Will Jawando. I think she's just
don't count her out, Cary. In a multi-candidate race, anything can happen if you've got a strong base. I got to go to Mark for the last word. We got about a minute left, Mark.
Well, we were talking about the council before and how taxpayers, when Democratic politicians in Maryland in the middle of the night wake up and are worried about whether or not they're going to get reelected or not. They may be worried about the voters, but what they're really worried about is what's the teachers union going to do? I think that will be extremely important in deciding, particularly in a multi-candidate race, who ends up doing the best in the Democratic primary. And if you need any evidence of that, just take a look at Westmore.
Well, we haven't seen any of the Baltimore candidates come out yet, and I'm sure they're going to. So this isn't just going to be, a Montgomery County, Prince George's County.
It's early.
Horse race, to use a dead expression. Stay tuned for Parting Shots when we come back from this short break. And welcome back. Now with Parting Shots, Mark Uncapher.
So one of the underreported laws that got passed by the General Assembly was making Maryland rye whiskey our state spirit. And so that got me thinking about other symbols that ought to be recognized by the state. And number one on my list of symbols that personify the state of Maryland that ought to be recognized is Old Bay. And we ought to make that our state seasoning next year.
I thought Scotty's vodka was the state vodka. I don't know. Anyway, Cary, Lamari, your party.
All righty. As a civic activist, I want to pay tribute to the Montgomery County Civic Federation. They're going to be holding their annual awards banquet on June 12th at 7 p.m. at the Silver Spring American Legion Lodge at 8110 Fenton Street. Everyone is invited, or if you feel like it. It's the first time back since COVID. So
thank you, Cary, and thank you, Mark. I appreciate both of you being here. And I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.